Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program, Humanizing Library and Vendor Relationships, which is sponsored by Gale, part of Cengage Group. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. And I'll put some links in the chat for where you can register for upcoming webinars or watch previous webinar recordings. Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. So all of the attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speakers. Please note that you can use the anonymous option to submit questions if you'd like. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please do type your questions into the Q&A module as they occur to you. Also note that the presentation will include several interactive sections with the audience, and the chat will be open throughout the session. Our presenters encourage attendees to submit their comments through the chat. Also, there is closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom right corner of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program, and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version. And with that, we are ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Sabrina. I really appreciate the introduction. And with that, I want to thank you guys all, everyone here, for attending the webinar today. We're incredibly excited to have everyone here and kind of share the presentation. My name is Kevin Coles. I've worked at Gale now for 7 years in a variety of positions, mostly interacting very closely with librarians. So this webinar is something that I'm very passionate about, and this came about, this is something Jacob and Jenn have presented. Jacob, who is the Senior Academic Library Consultant here at Gale, and Jenn, the Collection Strategist at University of North Carolina, Charlotte. This is something they presented to a group of librarians before. I had known kind of the deep collaboration that they had done just through working with Jacob. And hearing more about it, it was something that, I thought would be a phenomenal thing for us to present here at Choice. So that's kind of just to give you kind of the background of how this came around. And we're really excited to kind of share this presentation with you, and to share kind of Jacob and Jenn's thoughts on how librarians and vendors can come together and work on these relationships really to benefit ultimately end users and make sure everyone's needs are being met. And with that, I can hand it over to Jenn and Jacob. Throughout before I do that, one thing, throughout the webinar, we will have some opportunities for interaction. Be a slide that comes up that says ask the audience with some questions. You guys can interact within the chat. I'll be monitoring that kind of for themes, and if there's very specific questions a lot of people seem to be resonating with, we'll jump on those and take those questions. You can also use the Q&A function. The Q&A function has an anonymous submitting option. You can use that if you want, knowing the nature of kind of these types of things, this type of conversation. You feel free to use that, as well as please do not, with this, no mentioning of with the questions, there'll be questions, opportunities for telling, moments where you've interacted with vendors. Please, don't name anything specific and things like that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jenn, just to some housekeeping things, and we'll get into the program.
Sure. And real quick, Kristen Johnson had in the chat, will the recording be shared? And I believe ACRL, Sabrina, they're going to email that out to all registrants after this. So yes, it will be. But hi, and thank you all for coming. We've got a great group. There's like 164 people. So that's wonderful. And we all thank you for being here. And also, I've heard from some of my vendor reps that they're here too. And I'm really thankful for you guys as well for joining in. I'm Jenn Brosek. I'm the collection strategist here at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I have been here for almost 2 years and in the UNC system for almost 6. I've had the pleasure of working with Jacob for the whole time, basically almost right after he started Gale. So I found it was great to work with a long-term rep that we've got to go through a couple of different institutions together. So that's me. Jacob?
Hello, I'm Jacob Daoud. I'm the rep for Gale that covers North and South Carolina. I've been working with Gale, as Jen said, coming on 7 years now, and been working closely with Jen throughout my tenure here, but been in the education sector for 15 plus years. So happy to be here, happy to have everybody here. I know a few years ago, Jen, when I was a little worried when you were leaving your previous institution, but I'm super happy that you're back in UNC Charlotte, so you're still in my territory. Selfishly, I'm happy about that. And also, let's get this started. Here.
There's a little delay in slides. There we go. So for this presentation, it's not a demo, it's not a sales pitch. We just thought of doing something different. So what we sort of want to have this into 3 parts, and what you want to we want you to come away with is that why creating more meaningful and beneficial relationships between librarians and vendors is very important. I think we know we interact with vendors on the invoice side, and sort of sometimes that's just it. But I think there's a lot more that you can do, a lot more services that the vendors provide that I've found outside the sales part that have been really helpful and helped me do my job and helped me look at the collection a lot better. The second part is that part of how you can work together to meet the library needs, not only through products and services, but also their support and collaboration between the vendor and the library. And then at the end, we'll just have a small little section about advice and reflections about how to best navigate relationships with vendor representatives and how to get the most out of those partnerships or restart those partnerships if needed.
So now's the time when you hear the music, ask the audience. Now that Jen discussed what we want everyone to come away with from this session, I think it'd be a good time to ask the audience a few questions. And we'd love it if you would take the time to answer these questions. And if you've already done so, great. As you can see here, and as Kevin mentioned earlier, these questions have been posted in the Q&A and chat feature at the bottom of the Zoom. And when responding as well, just mentioning again, you can be anonymous. You just have to make sure you click the box necessary there. And then also, if you can please just put a number 1, 2, or 3 next to your response so we know which question you're referencing. And as you're answering, don't worry about offending me or with any of your responses. Being in sales, you have to have thick skin, and everything is good here to hear what you all have to say. So question 1, what do you hope to learn from this session? 2, what are your biggest challenges working with vendors? 3, what do you like best about working with vendors? And as these questions are being answered and coming through, Jen and Kevin, if you want to monitor the chat there and just let Jen and I know what's coming through.
Yeah, there was just one kind of technical question. Is there a poll? I'm not seeing. People can put their answers, their responses to this in the chat, or you can use the question and answer feature to do this as well. Kind of working within the boundaries of Zoom here to get people's responses.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot coming in.
Yeah, there's a few coming in.
I'm looking at the Q&A, but go ahead.
Yeah, and some people new to acquisitions and they have a lot to learn. How to handle a large number of vendors as a small team, which my experience calling librarians, that's probably very relevant to a lot of folks. Getting to answer to number 2 is getting a hold of vendors and remembering who the current rep is. Lots of turnover. I think this one, the annual increase is always higher than realistic library budget, is one that's coming in. And again, this is a second one. I think that's a common response is libraries are tone deaf to library, or vendors are tone deaf to library budget situations. Kind of think that's definitely something vendors can learn from.
And I'm seeing in I'm very interested in some of these anonymous ones coming in the Q&A that I'm seeing. But a lot of it is like turnover from the reps. How do you what can a vendor do for me? And what do you do about the change in reps or turnovers? Or I like this one. Why do some librarians think it's okay not to respond to emails from vendors they already do business with? That's interesting. And getting a hold of vendors, that is a challenge for some of them. I see that. So great. This just gives us a good idea. There's like around the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to address the tone deaf on the budget issues. I think we hear it loud and clear. We know the struggles that librarians are going through, and hopefully this presentation and this discussion will really bring to light why collaboration is necessary for us to understand what you're truly dealing with, for us to hopefully not only negotiate but navigate through these difficult times and focus in target necessary areas and departments on campus. So it's good to hear. Thanks for all the feedback.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, we'll go through some of these. Some of these I am seeing that we'll talk to, and then we definitely can go at the end too. We got time.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Then I move forward. Did you want me to move forward?
yeah, it's great. All right. So I guess oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. So why we work on vendor relationships, and we fully understand that a vendor and an institution have separate but similar goals and initiatives year over year, talking about budget constraints. But this doesn't mean each of these milestones can't be intertwined throughout. But you do have to, like I was talking about, you have to create that environment. It's not difficult where you must go out of your way to cater to any vendor or any library. It simply takes a clear line of an open communication from vendor to institution and vice versa in order to find that best mutually beneficial solution. So it takes the open lines of communication, collaboration. We need to understand both sides of the coin as much as you're able to share. We know you can't share everything, and we're understanding of that. And in working with Jenn and understanding UNC Charlotte's needs at a much more granular level, much more than I would have uncovered when I'm reviewing a campus's website or looking at a strategic plan or any other means of research, Jenn was able to walk me through exactly what was needed at UNC Charlotte, which in turn allowed me and Gail and internally to work to create specific UNC Charlotte packages and just programs that could be beneficial at some point, but that not only can meet the curriculum needs, but would also bolster the primary sources necessary for aspirations of a premier research institution like UNCC. And we'll get into some of the specifics further along in the presentation, but as a Gale rep, it's been wonderful working with Jenn. I'm not just tooting her horn. It's been outstanding, and because I understand UNC Charlotte's holistic goal to improvement, and I can ensure on Gale's end that I'm highlighting the best offerings, because we have not only can it become very cumbersome for a library to review everything. You're mentioning having many different vendors coming at you with a small staff or a small library forced to review everything. Being in communication and being much more targeted allows us to be targeted and present what we need to be focused on. And that's the communication that's Jenn shared with us, because it's an evolving relationship over time.
Right. And speaking of the tailoring, I would say it's important to be as transparent as you can, and so you don't waste their time, or you don't have to waste your time hearing about stuff you're not interested in. And I will say, as far as research goes with, working with vendor reps and all, I don't think we have that much in library literature. I find that more in business resources, there's everything from business, just pull up journals, sort of understand coming from the vendor side, like what are they doing? How is like the work from switching to contractor works or the gig economy? Or Harvard's got a really good blog on the school of law, the program on negotiation that I subscribe to, so that you can kind of understand like where your salespeople are coming from and why it's important to tailor. And sort of these first two things, I think if we as librarians sort of go to that part of literature, you're understanding how to communicate and work with vendors a little better. And if I've ever done training, or if you've ever gone to a talk of mine, I usually say, make the vendor work for you. I found there's some hesitation in librarians that are like, well, the vendor's stuff's going to come out. It's going to be biased. It's not going to be the real unbiased work that we do. And I would say, they can always do stuff that you don't have to take, that you can sort of take their base and package it differently, or you might have a base and ask them to package it differently, or you can just sort of, it can help with the bandwidth. I mean, they're not doing your work, and they can maybe give a foundation, but it also can help. We don't have time, we don't have staff, we don't have money. Just sort of having and working with the different parts of the vendor can help you with your own sort of work processes and give you some time and some bandwidth back. And the last one, and this is from me, it's not from Jacob, but the vendor side, is if you don't work with them, if you don't work on your own professional development about working with vendors, you don't sort of read how to communicate or sort of how to negotiate or how to interact with these, you really don't give them a reason to care, in the sense of if you want something, if you're working long-term, or if the vendor knows you and knows your account, like like I said, you don't have to hear about stuff you're not interested in. You also hear stuff that's more pertinent, and they do have a more motivation to sort of work closer with you if they know that they see the email from you. So that's
And
sort of
those are Jenn's words. Those are Jenn's words, not mine. I would say flying blind, because as a salesperson and as a vendor working with an institution, we're doing everything we can, obviously, to win your business. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. And if there's no communication, we might be pitching the wrong package that's meant for what you're looking for.
Great.
Ooh, this looks a little wonky.
This is showing a little different. Oh. Well,
I think it's the transition from the ACRL driving of this. So maybe
imagine this slide is pretty blue boxes with words you can actually see that are nice. I was just saying, if you're interacting just about invoices, you're missing some other things that I found vendors can work with you on. Some of these, like that they can do LibGuide help, or they can do holding analysis or peer reviews. But there are different things that you work with vendors on, whether that's help for new programs or courses, or BAs or PhDs at your school, accreditation assistance. Some of they can pull that information a lot quicker. Sort of course alignment reports, which is something we're going to get into with this, that they'll be able to sort of give examples that may help you package and help you be able to identify things quickly that you, again, can always change, but that you can have a foundation for. So some of these I've been used to from working with Gale. I have another long-term rep that I had in Maryland. I knew that they did some of these, and I knew that they were growing their academic outreach and engagement team. I know that they grew that group at Gale by more positions and more investment into that part of Gale in like late 2021. So I figured see what they can do. Chat with Jake.
Well, that's not me.
Chat with Jacob and see, even though I know that department deals with supporting resources you already have, and not new things, I figured why not ask and just see what they can do for me. The situation, we'll get into this in a little bit. The scenario was that I was looking at their wish list sort of in, I don't even know when we started, Jacob, in the year, but it was before the end of the fiscal year. So yeah, we were looking at just the wish list, and I was trying to say, like, these things that have been on the wish list for years and years and years that I didn't have a lot of information about, or I knew about, but I knew they had probably changed or had more in-depth experience or information about. So just sort of to like strengthen up like information I had or organized about if the instance happened where we could grab something on the wish list, I would have all the information there. So that's sort of where we were, and I'll get into that a little bit later. So you can go to the next slide, which looks pretty now.
There we go. So thanks, Jenn. We'll now get into a unique example that Jenn was alluding to with Gale and UNC Charlotte, where we're able to collaborate to create an institution-specific offering. And Jenn, I'm going to need your help here, so please don't hesitate, jump in throughout, chime in at any time as I go through this this part of the presentation and as I go through the examples. And in this particular example, we're going to discuss again the open communication around improbable requests, if I say so myself, Jenn, that can lead to successful developments. And throughout, we'll discuss lessons learned and general advice that we're happy to share and collaborate there.
Right. So what I was saying is we had our wish list. We had no money, right? We didn't think we would have any money. Usually you don't unless the stars line. And figured I would let Jacob know what we had on the wish list forever from Gale. And if we were to get money, this little bit of money we might have. And I knew I was asking for something outrageous, but I still threw it to Jacob, said, hey, I want it the moon and beyond, and I want it for like free. Not really, but that, you know, I knew it didn't match up, right? But at least I wanted him to know sort of what we were interested in, and sort of, if we did get something, like, here's literally what we're probably working with, if we get end of the year or not. So I knew it was not going to probably happen, but I figured, you know, Jacob said this is an exercise. We aren't dealing with selling. There's different parts of Gale that can help me get information. So I figured, why not ask? I mean, I wasn't doing much work at this point anyway. It was going to be on Gale. So there was no harm in asking and no harm in getting information from them. So that's sort of where we were. We're in the situation. I contacted Jacob, and Jacob can go from there.
I mean, to Jenn's point, a big part of our job is really to plan for a miracle. We know that budgets are fluctuating at all times, and sometimes they're unknown until the 11th hour. So with Jenn and UNC Charlotte, at the beginning of this process, I wanted to get a sense of where UNC Charlotte stood next to their peer institutions. And this is another thing where collaboration is key, because the peer institutions that we see here are not the same ones that we see on websites. If I was to Google UNC Charlotte's peer institutions, these don't pop up. Jenn shared these specific ones that they were looking at, and wanted to see where there were gaps in Gale primary source holdings. And this isn't the full document, but you can get an idea of where UNC Charlotte was in what areas they should be focused on, and as they continue to review content for their research. So at this point, from developing my relationship with Jenn at UNCC, we compiled a wish list, like she mentioned, with her and her colleagues that they built over the years. And then we have an idea of collections that are necessary to acquire to keep up with their peers, but we still don't have any clear understanding if there's funding even there. So this is, again, us doing our due diligence on the vendor side to make sure that you're in a position to know exactly what you're going to acquire if and when funding comes through. Jenn, did you want to add anything else on that?
Not on this. Okay. Good.
So then at this point, I have the wish list. I have the understanding that there's some gaps that UNC Charlotte has. So what I did from here is get Gale's academic outreach and engagement team involved. And if you're not aware of this team yet, it's a newish team within the past 2 years, team for Gale that supports our institutions to drive usage and awareness of Gale collections through collaborative engagement opportunities such as trainings and implementation. So what we want to make clear is, if you aren't purchasing every month, every year, there is still a huge service and support arm of Gale that's there at your service. So we want you to take advantage. So there's much more of this team, of what this team's tasked for, and I don't have enough time on this call to review everything that falls within their remit, but I wanted to make everyone aware of the Gale academic outreach and engagement team and the benefits that they will bring your institution. So if you are interested at any time in learning more about the AOE team, that's the little acronym we have for them, please reach out to us or your rep directly, and we'd happily get a call arranged there. But from here, I sent everything to Sarah Tarpley, who's Gale's Director of Academic Outreach and Engagement Team, and everything that I had, I asked her if she'd be able to assist and her team be able to assist and try to align their wish list with suggestions to UNC Charlotte's curriculum and help better identify the needs of not only the institution, but obviously what Gale primary sources would align well. And then Sarah put this following document together, and you can see in the table of contents that we're showing here, the course correlations with specific Gale primary source collections aligned to UNC Charlotte subject areas. So it's very detailed and quite an extensive document.
And just to look at this, I mean, I was figuring they'd come back with some, like, here's some paragraphs on how this can, like, help your departments. I got this 32-page document back. And so when I get to this table of contents, I'm like, whoa, this is a lot more than I usually get from reps. So this was really great. And like I said, there's some hesitation. I'm like, oh, what do they tell me that I have to do? But, you know, just kind of trust the process. And I kind of got into this. And because I also did say to Jacob, like, you know, it'd be great to get buy-in so I can kind of see, you know, that it is just more than our humanities and social science that this could, you know, have an impact on. So it was like I said, it looked good and it was very impressive in the beginning. And Jacob's, we're going to have the next few slides of some of these reports he had. And before he gets into this, each of those had like these two. No, you can go to the next slide.
Sorry.
Yeah, you had these 2 pages for each, like the table of contents set. And what was really great was that it was all there. It was very easily consolidated. We had a description. We had some sample searches that we could use for words. They weren't sort of generic canned searches, which is what I really appreciated. We also had a link there, so that it's right when I sent either this whole package or sent the 2-pager to the affected like liaisons, or kind of pointed out to them when I sent it to them like where their section was. They didn't have to go look. They didn't have to like, where is the trial link and everything. It was right in there, and that they were done from the search results. And at that time, of course, to make that work, we had a trial also set up. So it was really great. We had the trial, the description, then we had sort of where their team had went through what they found on the open web, on our open site, of different classes, different descriptions, and they sort of took a hand at trying to see like what classes or courses this might line up to, and what different searches or search terms you could use. So like I said, it was a great foundation, a great starting point, and something I could easily send to our liaison librarians so that they can easily see. So sorry,
Yeah.
Jacob.
No, you're good. And I mean, your words better than mine, Jen. But as you can see, when we're going through these examples, we found that NECO, our 19th Century Collections Online series, was not only a huge area of improvement in accordance with UNCC's peer institutions, but these collections aligned well with the wish list and curriculum needs. And as Jen pointed out, this one is an example of the British Politics and Society. We have the subject areas covered, the collection. We give a brief overview of the collection so you can get an idea of what's contained in it, in courses and majors supported. We then highlight the discipline this collection aligns to and why. And then lastly, Sarah and the AOE team provides exact courses these collections will be applicable to when we're delivering this to institutions. So in each of these examples, we hope you'll see that these collections are interdisciplinary in nature to allow for more of a seamless acquisition process. Because if you have a product or a solution that meets the needs of multiple departments, in this case, we're looking at business, political science, history, and others, you'll get more of a buy-in since their requests can all be filled at once. So it's our job as vendors to make sure that we're clearly targeted and specific to multiple disciplines, multiple departments, and this document proves to show that here. Jen, do you have anything else on this one?
Yeah, I'm actually going to answer something really quick in the chat. Someone has put, how do folks feel about accepting trials when they know they can't afford a subscription in the future? Do you promote it, knowing it will not be available after the trial? In this case, we didn't promote it. This was just sent to the liaison librarians and was there for their review itself. Like you've seen a response to yours, I guess it depends on the library and the scope. In this case, I told Gail, we're not having, might not have a whole trial. We're just going to send to the librarians, and they were on board. So you can kind of figure out who you need to open up to. But that was what we did in our case, was it was just at the beginning towards the librarians to just kind of have something to look at this along with, live searches. Sorry.
No, you're good. And from a vendor point of view, I've had many institutions that budgets were not available. There was not an acquisition for a few years, but they were still trialing. They were still understanding what content and products, technology, user interfaces are out there to have an understanding of the market for if and when something becomes available. I think internally and to the professors and faculty on campus, let them know there is no money for this. We just want to know what's in it, or it's just really the communication to them, but that's what I would think. And then here is an example of NECO Asia in the West, Diplomacy and Cultural Exchange. Again, we show the subject areas covered throughout the collection. We give an overview, demo search, and here we show the interdisciplinary coverage from economics, history, Asian studies, to anthropology. And so you can see, and hopefully the wheels are turning as to how this approach will benefit your institution. And what you see, whatever you're seeing from Gale now and in the future, you're going to see a lot of interdisciplinary studies. We always have had that, but we want to make sure that we're really honing in on that when we're collaborating with institutions. Here's an example of NECO Science, Technology, and Medicine, 1780-1925, Part 2. We have Part 1, but we chose to pick this one first, showcasing the subject areas covered throughout the collection. Again, an overview, demo search, bookmarked searches in here. And what's special about this collection is that it highlights where Gale primary sources fit within biology, health sciences, STEM courses, because yes, we are leaders. We are the leaders when it comes to humanities at Gale, but we do offer extensive content coverage throughout the hard sciences as well. And this right here highlights that. We're able to highlight that with UNCC. Jen, anything there?
No, I'm good.
And then here we have the last example here is the NECO Science, Technology, and Medicine Part 1, 1780 to 1925. Subject areas covered again, collection. So we lay it out clear and concise throughout. So it's a PDF that we send over. Like Jen said, it was like 38 pages. So there's a lot for each subject librarian professor to be able to engage with and do a pre-review before acquiring a full collection. So hopefully you all see how this is beneficial. All right. And then we are on to next.
So what happened next is, I get this report, which, like I said, I was impressed. I thought I was going to get like 2 pages or something. So I got this report and kind of looked at it, made sure, it wasn't, it was tailored to us, and sort of made a game plan of, which parts, which 2-page sections to kind of line up with our liaison librarians. And, we met, I sent it out to them to say, this is our wish list. Just kind of, we have this trial set up if you want to go and take a look at it and go see sort of, how this might affect your own areas, to sort of, because I knew like if we were going to have a chance at getting this, that we needed to have buy-in from multidisciplinary departments on campus. So we did that. We they looked at it. They had, I think it was a month. They had the trial to look at, and then this is where we started. Okay, the stars aligned for any vendors on this call. Like, we did not have, like, libraries in general did not have money. So the stars did align. We were able to have a certain amount. It still sort of wasn't where we needed to be. But this is where it became like quite a few months of working with Jacob and his team, and his management team, to sort of find creative ideas to be able to make it happen. Some of which involved, like, converting something we had as a subscription to a buyout. So different things like that we can sort of save money, but sort of over time, but sort of try to reach our goal with this. So we were able to get it, but like I said, this really wasn't the focus of this. It was really that this was a great positive experience. Even if we didn't get it at the very end, this is a positive experience. There's really no stress on my side. Once I started working with Jacob, it kind of went into the void to me with him working. I might have submitted some answers to questions he had along the way, but and then I got this back, and I really didn't have to tweak with it much. But if I do, I've asked Jacob lots of times, like, I don't like how this looks, go refix it, so but it was a great, as we kind of looked at it as an exercise of using the academic outreach and engagement team for something, so that we might get in the future, or just see to give me more information to have for the wish list. If it's a few years from now, we couldn't get it still, that I still have that information there available, with pretty minimal work on my part for this this part of the purchase. So yeah, that's about for that. The next part, we oh, go ahead and take it.
Ask the audience. Question 1. How do you feel about working with vendors? Example, best part about the job: I hate working with vendors. Necessary evil, don't care either way. And again, thick skin over here. Kevin has thick skin in marketing as well. Please ask and feel free to share. Just again, no naming of vendors. We don't want anyone to be offended. Number 2, what's your most interesting vendor story? Please do not identify vendors again on this one.
And just with this, as people responses are coming in, I know we've gotten a lot of responses in the chat and a lot of things. We'll try to address everything in here, but feel free to put things that don't get addressed. We'll be able to, we're going to have this chat transcript, and it's something, we'll share with folks at Gale so people can hear these responses. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff. If there are things that we're not able to address today, I am just saying I want to have this conversation is open. We have, potentially doing future webinars on this subject where we can answer some of these other questions. I know Jacob and Jenn's specific ability to answer everything is limited to their roles and myself. So there's some things our ability to change things is limited as well. So we'll try to answer what we can. And just with that, I just want to make sure if your question is answered, or if there's something that's put in and we don't address it, we are taking note of it.
Yeah, just some things coming in about being overwhelming, not knowing who to contact, or having to kind of always say no.
Yeah.
Somebody put they love it when the vendor reps are knowledgeable. I think that is something, I'll just go on my soapbox here. This is not something I've cleared or, I think it's great when they're knowledgeable. And I think when you do find reps and companies that sort of keep their reps along for a long time, you are going to have that knowledge. And I do feel the pain that you put, Joshua, in that question, because if you keep getting new people, you have to keep restating your story, which is what someone put earlier on. It becomes a little frustrating to do that. So it is great when they're around and then they can be knowledgeable. But obviously, like if you don't, like someone put, it's hard to know who to contact, especially when people turn over. Yeah, it's sort of just reaching out.
Yeah, I mean, and knowing who to contact, we understand that, and we understood that could be difficult. And thankfully, here at Gale, we aligned all our territories to have one rep per institution. So as far as Gale's concerned, we've alleviated that kind of cluster of emails coming through. So we're happy to point that out. And with the no's, I mean, as long as we're communicating, I mean, if you can say nothing's available, okay, that's perfectly fine. We're not going to be, most vendors won't be too pushy. And we just want to let you know what's out there if and when, again, that miracle happened at end of year funding, because we never know what end of year could look like if money trickled down to the library.
Like somebody put that their vendor bribed them with a trip across country. I don't know if that's quite legal, but yeah, but
I think the donuts. I saw someone mention donuts. That's probably a better.
This is another theme that's coming in. Someone put and somebody plus one did too. I don't appreciate working with vendors who are too pushy or will bypass the library to excite faculty about new products without knowing the library does not have the budget for fancy new products. That does happen. I've reached out to vendors and just said, I've actually reached out to my vendor rep's boss and said, I need a new sales rep change because they've bypassed the library. They've gone to our faculty, got them all excited, and this is unacceptable, and you need to do something to change it. So, there are unfortunately things that happen like that, but just
yeah, that's a tough situation for both sides, because I've never specifically had this situation, but in theorizing the situation, if I'm a vendor rep for an institution and a library won't allow me to communicate to the end user of our product, as long as I'm communicating and letting them know the budget is not there in the library does not have money, this is what we have. It's the sales rep and then the vendor's job to contact those professors. So there should be a conversation between that library and the vendor to try to form some communication that will be at least getting to the professors. So I mean, that's something that's a tough question. That's a tough situation if there's a rep that's blatantly going beyond the library and giving information that's detrimental to the library. I think the rep should be, the library doesn't have money. But explain to the library directly that it's our job to speak to the end users of these products.
And as I'm reading through these comments, what's really interesting is Jacob and I have done it's a whole different presentation. It's kind of like drawing scenarios out of a hat and just vendor versus librarian point of view. But I'm surprised there's a lot of positive comments about working with vendors.
Yeah.
I think like I usually see half. I've seen like some very angry, but like a lot of this is overwhelmingly positive, which is interesting
That's
because this is
awesome.
sort of like my niche is working with vendors or training people who work with vendors. So this is very a nice surprise. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's a huge kind of, I mean, there's the things that people are the themes here of, you know, vendors not understanding budgets. I think that's not a hard thing to crack. Vendors are always going to be wanting to, that's what we do. We are selling stuff. But I think there is a lot of, you know, about the human relationships and breaking through those things. And like, if you can just work with a person and have that relationship, I think that's a
Yeah,
lot of these answers. And I'm loving just the candid kind of conversation that this is facilitating. I think that's what, you know, this all comes down to, is communication of
Do you
each
want to
person's.
go? Do you want to go to the next slide? Because then we can get to
Yeah.
the Q&A later
Mhm.
quicker, and then we can have people. We can continue like because I think at the end, like, you can open up your mics too, or we can go with specific questions. But we just wanted one little sort of slide at the end, sort of just to wrap this up about general advice for working with vendors. And I guess the main thing is just ask. Like, even if you know it's not going to happen, like, you can just write an email and just ask, or you see them at a conference. I would just say, like, you can't get a yes or you can't get a no if you don't ask. So I would just say, you know, don't hesitate. A big thing that I think is important to come away with is that you're not wasting your time as a librarian, and you're not wasting their time as a vendor. They basically, these departments, or like vendors have, especially larger ones, they have multi-departments in it, and whether you ask them for something or not, those people are still going to be employed in those departments. Like, this is literally their job to go and do the non-sales stuff. So I would say you could just ask. They'll do the work. They're going to have work to do in that area anyway, whether you ask or not. And it's not, you know, it gives them, you know, like I said, they're there, that's their job. Like, go ask them to go do some information gathering for you, or like this example, to go kind of go wild, go look at our departments, go look at our classes, see what you come up with. And I think what also is helpful is, when you work with a vendor, be as transparent as you can. I mean, even if it's just saying, I'm being as transparent as I can, just even starts it. But, you know, if you don't have, I saw this in a lot of the comments, if you just don't have the money, just tell them. Or if you're like, I really am not interested, stop calling me. Or you call me at, somebody keeps calling them like a second after they get the email. Like, every time they email, they just tell them, like, I don't answer phone calls, like, just send me an email. So I mean, just be as transparent about how you work, be as transparent how you want communicated with, be as transparent as you can about the budget, where you stand, what you are seriously not interested in. I mean, I love working with vendors, but like, I tell enough vendors, no, like, I absolutely, this doesn't fit us. We are not interested. Your model is not working with us. So just talk to them. And then the last thing is sort of advice on how to start, repair, change, or strengthen vendor relations. We put, really, if you haven't talked to a vendor and you want to, just start it. Just be like, hey, we haven't talked, or hey, we had a, you know, bad relationship, or hey, we always tell you no. Just restart over. If you never even talked to them, just a good idea is to say, hey, let's have an account overview, you know, or just, can we, you know, just chat and see what's new. Just start sending me some emails. You can always, like, recycle them into your vendor email folders. But yeah, I would say just sort of, there's always a chance to repair. There's always a chance to restart talking with them. There's always a chance to restart and tell them, you know, no, I don't want this, or yes, I've always told you no, but now I'm going to tell you yes, or we really need your help on this, you know, if we're doing like accreditation or something. So I think it's always just good advice, just to, you can always restart it at any time. Jacob, anything to add?
I think you said it all. I mean, we hope that this discussion really opens up your mind to, I mean, we are intertwined throughout the process of start to finish, from once you get your idea of the initiatives of an institution and where that it's going to look and how vendors will fit in. But we want to help. We're there to help at all times. If you have a great relationship with your vendor rep, wonderful, keep it going. If you don't have a relationship at all, like Jen said, just reach out. And if the relationship's not that great, I mean, there's no better time to start anew and rebuild that. But I really appreciate everybody joining this call. Jen, Kevin, and ACRL, I appreciate you allowing myself and Gail to be a part of this. I didn't know if we were going to do a little more Q&A or if we were going to pass it
Yeah,
back.
I think there's a lot of stuff in the chat that we can address. I know Jen, you're kind of looking through everything. It looks like you're reading over there. If there's anything that pops out to you, a couple of things I'll just mention just from the Gale side. I know there's a couple Gale folks in the chat just to mention kind of their perspective. I know folks in the chat are talking about with interacting with faculty and circumventing the library. There's someone mentioned of the nursing department buying collections the library already had access to, and that is obviously not the goal. We're not trying to do that. We want to avoid that. And I know Gail I've been served as in a representative role at Gale, a sales rep. We're always trying to make sure we can communicate with the library, anything like that. But one thing, Roger Strong, he's the vice president of academic sales at Gale, he mentioned in the chat is we're interacting, just to give you some perspective on how we go and interact with faculty. We're at shows often at scholarly conferences. So we are interacting with faculty that may already have access to stuff that they didn't know about through the library. And we find that's an awesome way of us to help libraries boost usage of resources they already have. That's one way we establish relationships with faculty, and it just kind of comes along naturally like that. So that might be one way that we're talking to faculty and not necessarily directly talking to the library through these scholarly shows. And then another thing I wanted to point out just from our product team is Bennett Graff, who was in our chat talking about our direct lines with faculty are really, really valuable for us in terms of product development, understanding kind of end user things. So just a perspective, totally understanding the, librarians, understanding the, budget restrictions and things like that, and not getting, managing expectations, but just to give you some perspectives of why Gale might be contacting faculty, and it's not always directly to get them to pound down the door for a new collection. And I Jennifer Barlow, I thank you very much. This is the refreshing burst of collegiality. I think that's exactly what we want to establish with this, and that's kind of what we saw with Jacob and Jen talking. That's what I saw with them when they've talked about this, and I was like, this is exactly what we want to get out there. So, Jen, is there anything else that you're seeing that is popping up that you want to address?
We've got some minutes. We've got
no, we've got time.
So,
I just
so Sabrina thank you, Sabrina, because the questions are going by on the Q&A really fast. So she put 2 in the chat, and I think I can answer both first, Jacob, and you can add on. I'm going to choose the second question first. How do you ask for a new rep if you're not getting what you need from your current rep? I would say ask. I would say, but if you don't if you know someone else who works there, reach out to them. If you don't know, ask your colleagues in a different region of the country who has a different rep and be like, hey, I mean, you can ask, be like, hey, do you know who is over this level of salespeople that I can contact to kind of have an initial conversation about, our rep just not working with us? Because sometimes it just doesn't work. I mean, sometimes it's just personalities or things. So I think the times I've had to do this, which I have, it wasn't always a negative thing. It was just like they're just not meshing with us. And so I've asked, colleagues at different who have different reps to be like, hey, can you ask your rep who's the person that I need to reach out to? Or seriously, like LinkedIn, I have some of these people on LinkedIn, and you can sometimes see who their boss is, or you can see and get their name, then email them if you've figured out it's like first name, last name at vendor.com. So I would say it's not always a negative thing. I found when I've asked if vendors are used to hearing this, and you can just, if you don't want to go into the details in the initial email, just say, hey, this is just not meshing with like what we need, and we need someone else. And it's happened, and I've gotten new reps to sign. And I think you want to add anything on that before I go to the other question, Jacob?
I was just going to say, I mean,
No.
I can speak for Gale. I mean, everyone should know who their rep's direct report is. All my customers know Vince and Roger, who I report to. So I would go to the manager, and it could be a teaching moment for that rep. That rep could be new. that rep might be nervous. I mean, if you're an institution, it's intimidating to meet with institutions. I mean, even for me these days, I mean, 15 years into the role, I mean, I want to present my best offering and Gale offering, and it can be intimidating. So they might not be off their game that day. I mean, talk to that rep, and if that doesn't work, go up the ladder, like Jenn said. So I mean, we all can get better every day, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, and the other question on there was sort of related or not exactly, but how can, whoops, I just scrolled back up. Oh no, okay. How can librarians establish meaningful relationships with vendor reps when they're constantly changing our assigned reps? And I said, this is kind of hard. At this point, you know, if the reps keep changing, which some do, and like I said, for the vendors on this call, please think about how that looks to the librarians who are putting this in chat a lot. It's a theme. But you know, I would say you can reach out to, like I said, go the ways that I said, and go find someone else at the company, or, you know, if you're at a conference, find someone who's higher up and let them know you're concerned that this keeps changing and we can't deal with this. It's bad for your, this, be honest, it's just bad for your company. It's a bad look for your company. Assign me someone permanent. If it can't be this level, then bring me up to another level of the sales rep or the account reps. Or I mean, I think the vendors need to know from librarians that this looks bad on them. This is hurting them. So what I was saying before, you know, be as transparent as possible. And if they keep changing, you could let them know this is not something that's going to support us, and either, you know, sort of assign us a rep that's more solid, or a higher up that's more solid, or basically, you know, we can get better rep service from a competitor. I mean, sometimes you got to go that way and tell them that to be able to get someone permanent. But it is hard because some, I have to figure out how to say this, some vendors are, you know, they have a continually revolving door, and they're not going to be able to give you a sort of permanent rep. So I would say in that case, save all the emails, document, so that you have an emails, like a conversation, and you could forward to them, be like, okay, new person, here's where we left off for the last person, and here's like our account. Because they might not always, someone had put earlier, like, yeah, with the transition and changeover, sometimes, you know, you have to retell the whole story or information is lost. So
Yeah, and I completely agree. I mean, if you have a revolving door, you're not going to be able to build that relationship. This development with UNC Charlotte took 3 to 5 years. I mean, we understand these large ticket items are cyclical, and they need to be worked year over year, and they may never come in. So, I mean, having a rep long standing is key to that relationship. And like Jenn said, I mean, if not, then you'd have to get to the management level to stay consistent with whatever vendor that is.
And then,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, Jenn, I think you were about to say, Sabrina just put in
Yeah.
a couple other questions. It's tips on how to handle large number of vendors as a very small team. That was one that was coming up over and over, came up a few times. And then how to better engage with vendors about e-resources.
Yeah, that's when I was looking at the first one, is you have a very small team. I would be as open as you can. Like, it's just me. Expect, like, long pauses of communication. But what I found is really good to do as a short, as if you were short staff or small staff, is, you get tons, like hundreds of emails every day, right? Get a Word doc, go do some sample emails, like, hey, thank you for the information, we're not interested this time. Or like another one, like, hey, thank you, we will get in touch with you, or get back in touch with me at the end of the year, and have it as a doc. And sometimes when you get that and you get an email, you can just copy and paste it in if you need to. I mean, that's something I found when I worked at a smaller library that kind of saved me time to do. That's one way you could do it to save time. Another thing you could say is, just tell vendors, I only talk to vendors, March through June or something. If you really can, or you only will talk to vendors during breaks, and let them know that they can contact you during, like, winter break, spring break, or whatever, summer. I think that's a way to do it. It just depends on your library's structure. If there's a group email it can go to, so that multiple people see it, and then sort of people know when to chime in, or when they answer different topics, that's another option. And I think vendors are used to getting no response, right, Jacob, at times, and you just know they're busy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
No, I mean, we assume that you're getting bombarded and inundated with emails. So there's no, I mean, we understand that. And I think just engaging with vendors, I mean, just dropping us a line. I mean, if I had a new institution, if I took over a new school that I had no idea about, I would want to go there and just discuss current holdings with Yale and present our offerings, just so you know what's out there. And there is no commitment at that presentation level where you're not committing any funds, you're just committing some time and to get some knowledge of what we have out there. So engaging is just drop a line. I mean, all vendors are wanting to have that conversation. We're ambitious for the conversation, and if you're open to it, we are 100%.
I always think of vendors, they're just sitting there doing cold calls, getting no's, getting no answers. So they're really happy when you want to talk to them. So
It's true.
But so how to better engage with vendors about e-resources is really you set that yourself, right? I mean, if you want to talk with them more, find a vendor rep that you're like more comfortable with and say like, hey, how do you interact with other customers? Like, how do they interact? Sometimes like you can learn from your vendor reps too. I'll just be honest, when I was first coming to be the first out of library school and was dealing with the big deals like the journal publishers, it was very overwhelming. And I was like, well, I'm gonna sound stupid if I ask, very whatever questions. I don't have time to go in. And one of my big deal reps, she sat with me at Charleston for like 3 hours and was like, look, let me tell you everything about it. So sometimes you can learn from them, like at a conference thing, and just sort of have these conversations or ask them how they interact with others or ask them to explain something from their point of view, even if it's, I found like conferences and stuff like that, it's an easy way to sort of have those conversations there. Love to see a session on post-sale vendor relationships and training.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, this is we've got a very good response from this, and I think we will try to have additional sessions on this same theme in the future. So keep an eye out for that. But I love that idea, John. All right. Is there any other things, Jen, that you saw that specifically that you wanted to address? I think as we're getting
faculty kept coming up about, like I said, they don't like, how do you make the vendors not talk to faculty, or like, but I think Roger and a couple other people answered like,
yeah, Aaron Gallagher had some great responses in the chat.
It's basically about, once it gets to like I let Jacob know if you're at a conference and you talk to a faculty or something, when it starts getting to licensing or pricing, can you please like cut the conversation off on that and tell them you need to work with the library.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I've handled it. So
one point that was brought up in the Q&A, I don't know if you guys saw, it was problematic when vendors approach multiple librarians at once. Which as someone who I've been in a sales role, I've done that, and I'm interested, I'd like to learn more about the library perspective on that, and kind of what your thoughts on that, Jen, or what, and why is that problematic? What's the best way to take?
Well, some vendor, like, if it kind of feels like sometimes, I don't know the whole question on this, like the whole scenario, but sometimes like they'll chase a yes. And I think like vendors have evolved more that they don't do this anymore, but I used to see it beforehand, where like, if they got a no from me, then they would go to someone else. And then they would go to the subject librarian.
Okay.
And then, so it's kind of like that, or if you're not sending it to me and you're sending it to someone not involved, and then like, I get it like 2 weeks later, and I'm like, oh, like you guys should know who the contacts are. And sort of when you have, I like to call these account reviews, like Jacob was saying, just talk about what you have or whatnot. Let them know who to contact in what situations. And as a vendor, I would say, if you get a note, do not chase the yes, which I don't see that. Like I said, I saw that happening a lot more like 10 years ago kind of thing, but not,
because that wasn't even in my
now.
perspective when I was thinking about, I was just thinking about trying to get in touch with someone at the library, if I had, especially if it's a librarian I haven't talked to before, or a library I haven't made contact with,
we are coming to
I think we are at the end here, so I guess with that, thank you guys all for joining. We will I think we'll get a transcript of these chats, and we'll you know, I will take this and review things and kind of think about future webinars and kind of some additional content we can create within this to support kind of this specific kind of area of professional development. And I know Jenn's very passionate about it, and we really thank her for her contribution here and everything she's done. So thank you so much, Jacob and Jenn and everyone here for participating. This really obviously was a huge, there's lots of participation, and that really made the webinar what it was. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just echo everyone and say thanks so much to Jacob, Jenn, and Kevin for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your responses, your comments, and your questions. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the session and hope to see you again in the near future on another webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Have a great day.